Hey, welcome back, Covalence friends. Today we're going to be starting a new series called Making Your React Apps Better. This first episode is going to be a simple concept involving just components and which components should manage state, parents versus children, but we're going to get right into it. Before we do, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. And also, if you haven't checked out the new Covalence merch store, I will provide that link in the description as well. All right, let's get right into it. All right, so this is just a clone of our Next template, which I provided the repo link for the bare bones Next template in the description below, but I'll also provide the repo link for this as well. And we've added a few things to the Next template. Basically, this is our home page, and we've added a few little sections that I've basically just kind of made the height of the screen to make it look like, you know, there's some actual content. So it's more or less like a skeleton built out website, right? And at the top in the header, there's going to be a form, which is a form component. And later on down the screen, there's also another form component that's going to be styled a little bit differently. But essentially what we're doing is we're going to have like a header that has a little enter email field. And then later on down the page, we're also going to have another component that is also another way to subscribe. And our form component is in here. And all it is it's essentially a form with a submit button and an input and a button. Now, what we're doing is we're actually maintaining the state in our home page, right? So we have this email field here, we have this on register field here, and we're passing that into our form so that when you click submit, it's actually going to fire this on register button, and as you change the input fields down here, it's firing this and it's maintaining this email state in this index page, right? So it's actually in the home page itself. And let's go ahead and open up our terminal and we'll run this and I'll kind of just show you what we're working with. Let's go ahead, open this, and we will open the page here, right? So again, we have a nice little header section. Again, this is just quickly developed, so it would be essentially kind of like what a website would look like. You'd have a bunch of content here, a bunch of content here, right? And then later on down the page, you have a little contact us form or a subscribe form. So you fill it out, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's a terrible email, but let's just say test@test.com. And then you would subscribe. And actually, because we're maintaining state in the parent, it actually fills out everything, right? Now, this is great and all. And if you actually look at the screen, so if I actually show paint flashing for re-render, so this is a Chrome DevTools feature. As I'm typing this, right, you can see that this is re-rendering, and also down here, this would be re-rendering as well, right? And so we are accomplishing everything that we want to accomplish, right? We're only repainting what we need to repaint, and, you know, when we submit, everything looks pretty good, right? Now, the problem really comes in if we go back to our DevTools real quick, and we want to console, let's just console.log re-rendering, or we'll just call it rendering, right? And we're going to console log this every time that this index page renders, right? All right, so we got 2, that's pretty typical. Now we'll watch every time we type, we're actually going, this is multiplying here. So if you look up, we're actually firing this every single time we type, because if you see, this is still growing, because every single time we do this, we're actually going to be firing this index page, and we're going to be returning this, and then the React engine is going to have to be diffing this whole thing. Now, this is a very simple website, right? It's not really even a website. It's essentially just a skeleton of one. And so for React to diff this, it's not a huge ordeal, right? It goes through here, it looks at all this, it actually goes through the layout and everything like that. It has to pull the layout, get that to return itself. So in this particular sense, it's not doing a whole lot, and it's able to successfully diff out everything and only paint the screen when, like, where we need it to paint. But the problem is, as this gets more and more complex, React is going to have a harder time diffing all this out, especially if you're grabbing things asynchronously. I'm not doing any type of API calls, and it's significantly easier for React to kind of diff this out. Now, at some point, React can get overloaded. If your website is big, you have this huge page, it may not be able to diff out everything, or it may determine that it's going to be slower and just re-render everything, right? Or it might be faster just to re-render everything. And this could be an issue. It could cause your images to start flashing. It could cause a lot of things to have to reload. And it's a pretty awful experience, right? And so this is a common pitfall that I actually see a lot of people do, is that they'll be like, oh, well, I can just maintain my state in my parent for everything, right? For form submissions and that kind of thing. And we'll just pass in everything down into our child components. But realistically, this is not the way you want to do it. Like, especially in this case, now there are maybe some use cases where you absolutely have to be passing state values from a parent down into your children. But in this particular case, you don't have to, right? We can go ahead and we can just remove these altogether. We'll pull this out. We'll go into our form. We don't need this anymore. We'll go into our form and we'll add this to our form now, right? So we're going to remove these. You're going to remove these. And we're going to now add useState here. And everything else is the same, right? Because we're using the same function names. All right, and then in our index, we're going to have to change these up. We're no longer going to pass these guys in. And we're going to go ahead and let this compile. All right, we're going to remove that console. And now, as we type, you can see that we're no longer re-rendering that parent, right? So only the child component is rendering now. All right. Go down here, you can type, submit, right? Well, that's because it's not an email. But yeah, so submit, and bam, you get everything you need to render. All right. Screen painting is the exact same as before. And yeah, everything looks good, right? And so definitely whenever you can, make sure that your child components, they maintain their own state. You're not passing state values back up to your parents, because that's going to cause that whole component to re-render. It's going to cause React to have to essentially perform a diff that, in this case is small, so we didn't have any consequences, but as your applications get larger, as your web pages get longer, it will cause problems. I guarantee it. I've built way too many websites. Now, I know React's engine is getting better and better. The diffing engine is super impressive, to be honest. But I have encountered times, especially when using asynchronous calls or using CMSs like headless CMSs like Prismic or WordPress, you will encounter issues. You will end up re-rendering this whole page, and it will cause problems because you'll see things like images moving around. You'll get that page shift where if you haven't actually set your sections correctly and your sections grow as images load, that will happen every time you type, and it's going to be a very wonky, very horrible experience for your web page viewers. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know it seems like a super simple concept, but you'd be surprised at how many times I encounter this and I see this, in production websites. And so I definitely encourage you to build things right from the beginning, because the problem is you build it in the beginning and then it doesn't have any issues, but as your site grows or gets larger, all of a sudden there's problems down the road. So don't add technological debt to your websites. Build things correctly from the beginning, and make sure that everything is optimized from the get-go and you won't have any problems. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to drop them in the section below. Otherwise, if you have any content suggestions, definitely shoot them over to us. We'd love to make you guys some extra videos. All right, see you soon.